Part 1. The Diplomatic Mission. The Galactic Council chamber was massive. Lights glowed softly from the ceiling, making everything look peaceful and calm. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their special seats. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of crystal. A few were just clouds of gas floating in special containers. They all came from different worlds across the galaxy. Ambassador Jiwan Park stood at the center platform. He was a human from Earth. He wore a dark blue uniform with the Earth symbol on his shoulder. Jiwan was 43 years old. His hair was turning gray at the sides. He had been working with aliens for more than 10 years now. He knew how to talk to them. He knew how to be patient. Standing next to Jiwan was Lieutenant Minho Choi. Minho was the head of security for the human delegation. He used to be a soldier before he started protecting diplomats. He stood very still and watched everything carefully. His job was to keep Jiwan safe, even though nothing dangerous ever happened in the council chamber. The meeting had been going on for 3 hours. The aliens were talking about whether humans could use certain space routes for trading. A snake-like alien named Representative Quailik spoke in a hissing voice. "Your human ships are old technology," Quailik said. His long body moved in curves as he talked. "Your weapons are weak. How can we trust you to travel safely through our space? What if pirates attack you? What if you need help?" Jiwan kept his face calm and friendly. He had answered questions like this many times before. "Honored Representative," Jiwan said, using the polite title. "Earth has been a member of this council for 15 years. We have always kept our promises. We are not asking to bring weapons through your space. We only want to bring trade goods, food, medicines, and technology to share with other worlds," another alien spoke up. This one was called Counselor Thren. He was old and respected by all the other species. His species was called the Pelians. They looked like tall birds with 4 arms and eyes on stalks. "The human request is reasonable," Thren said slowly, "but we must be careful. Humans are still new to galactic society. Perhaps we should start with a cultural exchange first. Let our young people learn from each other. Then we can build trust for larger agreements." Jiwan liked this idea. The people of Earth would be honored to participate in such an exchange, Counselor Thren. The other aliens made various sounds of agreement. Some clicked their mandibles. Others changed colors. A few released pleasant smells. Each species had their own way of saying yes. Sitting in the observer section was Jiwoo Kim. She was a cultural liaison, which meant her job was to help humans and aliens understand each other better. She had been studying alien psychology for 6 years. She found it fascinating how different species thought about things in completely different ways. Jiwoo typed notes on her datapad as she watched the meeting. She recorded which aliens seemed friendly to humans and which ones seemed suspicious. This information would help Earth's government make better decisions. The meeting finally ended after 5 hours. Aliens began floating, walking, slithering, and hovering out of the chamber. Jiwan felt tired but satisfied. Progress in the Galactic Council was always slow, but today had been a good day. Counselor Thren approached Jiwan as the chamber emptied. His eye stalks bent down to look at the shorter human. "Ambassador Park," Thren said, "I want you to know that I believe in your species. You humans have something special. You work hard. You keep your word. This is why I suggested the exchange program." "Thank you, Counselor," Jiwan replied. "Your support means a great deal to Earth." "We will send information about the exchange station soon," Thren continued. "It orbits my homeworld, Peleus Prime. It is very safe, very peaceful. Your young people will learn much there, and our young people will learn about Earth culture from them." After Thren left, Minho stepped closer to Jiwan. "That went well," he said quietly. "Better than I expected." Jiwan nodded. "Thren is a good ally. If we can prove ourselves with this exchange program, the trade routes will follow." Jiwoo joined them as they walked toward the exit. "I was watching the body language of the other species," she said. "Most of them trust Thren's judgment. If he supports us, they will too. Let's hope the exchange program goes smoothly then," Jiwan said. They had no idea how wrong things would go. 3 weeks later, Jiwoo received a message from her younger brother, Hyun. He was a student at Seoul University studying biology and xenobiology. Xenobiology meant the study of alien life forms. Hyun had always been curious about other planets and other species. The message said, "Nuna. Guess what? I applied for the Galactic Exchange Program and got accepted. I'm going to Peleus Prime to study with real aliens. Can you believe it? Jiwoo smiled when she read the message. Her little brother was 22 years old now, but she still thought of him as a kid. She was proud of him for being brave enough to live on an alien world. She sent a message back. Congratulations, Hyun. That's amazing. Study hard and be respectful to the other species. Remember you're representing Earth now. Hyun replied immediately. I will. I promise to make you proud. 2 months passed. 20 human students traveled to the exchange station orbiting Peleus Prime. Hyun was one of them. The station was huge, designed to hold thousands of students from dozens of different species. Hyun sent regular messages to his sister. He told her about his new friends. There was Kuvex, a young Pelian who wanted to be a scientist. There was Shissel, a Harumi who existed as a cloud of smart gas inside a special suit. There was Crix, a Vex made of living crystal who could change colors based on her mood. Everyone here is so different, Hyun wrote, but we all get along great. We spend every evening in the common room talking about our home worlds. Kuvex told me that Pelians used to be warriors millions of years ago, but they evolved past violence. He says most council species did. They think fighting is primitive now. Jiwoo read these messages with interest. She shared them with Jiwon, who was pleased that the exchange was going well. This is exactly what we needed, Jiwon said. Real friendships between species. This will do more for human-alien relations than 100 diplomatic meetings. Minho was less optimistic. I still think we should have sent security with the students, he said. That station is far from any military protection. The council assured us it's safe, Jiwon replied. There hasn't been an incident at an exchange station in over 50 years. There's always a first time, Minho muttered. But nobody listened to his concerns. The exchange program continued successfully. The students learned from each other. They formed bonds across species. They proved that different beings could live together peacefully. Everything seemed perfect. Then, 3 months after the program started, everything changed. It was a normal evening on the exchange station. Hyun was in the common room with his friends. They were discussing the differences between Earth biology and Pelian biology. Kovacs was fascinated by how humans only had 2 arms. How do you carry things efficiently? Vex asked, waving all 4 of his arms. Hyun laughed. We manage. Besides, 2 arms means our brains can coordinate them better. It's a trade-off. Suddenly, alarm bells started ringing throughout the station. Red emergency lights began flashing. Warning, the station's computer voice announced. Hull breach detected in Section 7. All students proceed immediately to emergency shelters. This is not a drill. The students looked at each other with confusion and growing fear. A hull breach meant something had broken through the station's outer wall. That should have been impossible. Before anyone could move, all the lights went out completely. The station was plunged into total darkness. In the darkness, Hyun heard screams. Not human screams, but the distress calls of various alien species. Each one sounded different. Kuvex made a high-pitched whistle. Shissel released a sound like wind rushing through caves. Crix made a sound like glass breaking. Then Hyun heard something else. A clicking sound, sharp and rhythmic. It was coming closer. When the emergency lights flickered on dim and red, Hyun saw them. Pirates had boarded the station. Part 2, the attack. The clicking sounds grew louder. Hyun pressed himself against the wall, his heart beating fast. In the dim red emergency lighting, he could see shapes moving through the doorway of the common room. They were big, much bigger than humans. 6 creatures entered the room. They walked on 4 legs, but they also had 4 arms. Their bodies looked like giant insects covered in hard black shells. Their heads had large compound eyes and mandibles that clicked together constantly. Each one was at least 7 feet tall. These were Vreckens. Hyun had learned about them in his xenobiology classes. They were pirates and raiders. They attacked stations far from military protection. They took hostages and demanded ransom money. Then they disappeared back into deep space. All around Hyun, the alien students froze completely. Nobody moved. Nobody made a sound. This was the natural response for most council species when faced with danger. They had evolved to be peaceful. Their instinct was to be still and wait for the danger to pass. Kuvex stood next to Hyun, his forearms pressed tightly against his body. His 3 eye stalks were pulled down close to his head, making himself look as small as possible. Shissel compressed her gas form inside her containment suit, becoming almost invisible. Crick stopped glowing entirely, trying to blend into the walls. The Reckons moved through the common room, their eyes scanning all the students. One of them made a series of clicks and chirps. The others responded in the same language. Hyun didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They were counting the hostages. One Vrecken approached Kuvex. It reached out with one of its sharp-bladed arms. The alien was going to grab Kuvex and take him away. Something inside Hyun's brain suddenly activated. It was like a switch being flipped. His body flooded with chemicals. His heart rate doubled. His muscles tensed. His vision became sharper and clearer. Time seemed to slow down. This was adrenaline. It was a hormone that humans produced when they faced danger. Every human had this response programmed into their DNA from millions of years of evolution. Earth was a dangerous planet. Early humans had to fight predators to survive. They had to run from danger. They had to protect their families and their tribes. The council species had evolved past this response. They had civilized themselves. They had removed aggression from their biology. They were peaceful and rational, but humans were different. Humans still carried the old instincts. And when Hyun saw the Reckon reaching for his friend, those instincts took over completely. Hyun moved without thinking. His hand grabbed a metal serving tray from the nearby table. It was heavy and solid. He swung it as hard as he could at the Reckon's head. The edge of the tray hit the Reckon's compound eyes with a loud crack. The creature shrieked and stumbled backward. Dark fluid leaked from its damaged eyes. Every student in the room gasped. The other Reckons turned to look at Hyun. They seemed confused. A prey species fighting back? This had never happened before. Hyun didn't pause. He grabbed Kuvex with one hand and pushed him toward the emergency exit. "Run!"
Hyun shouted at the top of his lungs.
"Everyone run! Get to the shelters!" His voice broke the spell of fear that had frozen the other students. They scattered in all directions, heading for the exits. The Reckons tried to grab them, but the sudden chaos confused the pirates. Two Reckons turned their full attention to Hyun. They charged at him with their forearms extended. They moved fast, faster than a human could normally react. But Hyun wasn't thinking normally anymore. His brain had shifted into a state that human soldiers called combat mode. Everything seemed clear. He could see where the Reckons were moving before they got there. He could calculate angles and distances without conscious thought. Hyun grabbed a chair and threw it at the first Reckon. The alien blocked it with its arms, but that gave Hyun time to move. He dropped low and swept his leg out, hitting the Reckon's front legs. The creature's own momentum carried it forward, and it crashed into a table. The second Reckon tried to grab Hyun from behind. Hyun spun around and jammed the chair's metal legs into the joints of the alien's arm segments. The Reckon shrieked in pain and pulled back. Hyun's hands were bleeding now. His ribs hurt from a blow he didn't even remember taking. But he didn't care. All he cared about was giving his friends time to escape. All he cared about was protecting the students who couldn't protect themselves. And then Hyun did something that shocked the Reckons even more than his violence. He laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a wild, aggressive sound. It was the laugh of a predator challenging another predator. It was a sound that said, "I'm not afraid of you. Come and get me." The Reckons had never heard a prey species make that sound before. It confused them. It frightened them. "You want hostages?" Hyun shouted, backing toward a different corridor. "Then come get me." "I'm right here." And he ran. But he didn't run toward the emergency shelters. He ran deeper into the station, into the maintenance corridors and service tunnels. He was leading the Reckons away from the other students. 4 Reckons chased after him, their clicking sounds echoing in the narrow corridors. They were faster than Hyun and stronger. In an open fight, they would win easily. But Hyun wasn't planning to fight them openly. He was planning to survive, and humans were very, very good at survival. Hyun knew the layout of the station from the orientation tour they had received on the first day. He knew where the maintenance access points were. He knew where the emergency equipment was stored. He ran to a junction where 3 corridors met. There was a large pipe on the ceiling, carrying coolant for the station's systems. Hyun jumped up and grabbed the pipe with both hands. He pulled himself up and kicked at the pipe's connection joint as hard as he could. The joint broke. Freezing coolant sprayed out in a high-pressure stream. When the Reckons ran around the corner, the spray hit them directly. They shrieked and retreated, their hard shells crackling from the sudden temperature change. Hyun dropped down and ran again. He could hear the Reckons recovering behind him, clicking to each other in their language. They sounded angry now. Good, Hyun thought. Angry enemies make mistakes. He ran to a storage room and grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. Then he ran to a narrow corridor with a low ceiling. The Reckons were too large to move quickly in such a tight space. When they entered the corridor, Hyun sprayed the fire extinguisher directly at their eyes. The foam blinded them temporarily. While they clawed at their faces, Hyun slipped past them and sealed the corridor door behind him. It wouldn't hold them for long, but it didn't need to. He just needed to buy time. Time for help to arrive. Time for the other students to reach safety. Hyun's whole body was shaking now. The adrenaline was starting to wear off and he could feel pain all over. His hands were cut and bruised. His ribs were definitely cracked. His lungs burned from running, but he couldn't stop. Not yet. He found another service tunnel and climbed inside. It was dark and cramped, but it was too small for the Reckons to follow. He crawled through the tunnel, following the path toward the emergency shelter where his friends should be. Behind him, he could hear the Reckons breaking through the door he had sealed. He could hear them clicking in frustration. They had come to capture easy hostages. They had not expected resistance. They had not expected a prey species to fight back. Hyun kept crawling. His vision was getting blurry. His hands left bloody smears on the tunnel walls. But he kept moving forward. He was almost to the shelter. Just a little further. Then he heard a different sound. Not clicking, not alien. Human voices, shouting commands. The sound of weapons firing. Help had arrived. The Council's defense fleet must have gotten the distress signal. But more importantly, Hyun could hear human voices among the defenders. Lieutenant Minho Choi had brought Earth's security forces. Hyun's body finally gave up. He collapsed in the service tunnel, his energy completely gone. But he was smiling. His friends were safe. That was all that mattered. Part 3. The rescue ambassador Ji-won Park was in the middle of another council meeting when his communication device started vibrating. It was set to emergency mode, which meant it would only activate for the most serious situations. His hands went cold as he pulled out the device. The message on the screen made his heart stop. Distress call from Peleus Prime Exchange Station. Multiple casualties. Unknown number of hostages. Frecken Raiders confirmed. Human student status unknown. Ji-won stood up so fast that his chair fell backward. Every alien in the council chamber turned to look at him. His face had lost all color. Ambassador Park, Counselor Thren said with concern. What is wrong? The exchange station, Ji-won said, his voice barely steady. It's under attack. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds. Clicks, whistles, color changes, and scent releases filled the air, as each species expressed surprise in their own way. Lieutenant Minho was standing by the door, as he always did during council sessions. When he heard the news, he immediately activated his own communication device and started giving orders to Earth's military ships in the sector. I'm dispatching our nearest vessels, Minho said to Ji-won, but they're 40 minutes away at maximum speed. Counselor Thren raised one of his forearms to calm the chamber. Ambassador Park, please do not worry. We have already sent our defense fleet. They will arrive within 35 minutes. The Vreckens are predictable. They take hostages but rarely harm them before making ransom demands. The students will be safe. Ji-won wanted to believe this. He tried to slow his racing heart. But all he could think about was Ji-woo's little brother Hyun on that station. All he could think about was 20 human students facing alien pirates. Minho put a hand on Ji-won's shoulder. Hyun is smart, he said quietly. He'll keep his head down and follow the safety protocols. The council deals with Vrecken raids all the time. This is routine for them, but it wasn't routine for humans. Earth had only been in the Galactic Council for 15 years. Humans had never faced an actual alien attack before. They had no experience with this kind of danger. 35 minutes felt like 35 hours. When the Council's defense fleet arrived at the station, they found the Vrecken ship preparing to leave. But something was wrong. The Vrecken ship wasn't moving smoothly. It was wobbling and firing its engines in irregular bursts. The Vrecken vessel is fleeing, the fleet commander reported. They're leaving much earlier than expected. They haven't even made ransom demands yet. Did you engage them? Thren asked over the communication channel. No, Counselor. They fled as soon as our ships arrived in sensor range. This is unusual behavior for Vreckens. Normally, they would try to negotiate before leaving. The defense fleet docked with the station. Medical teams and security forces rushed inside. What they found confused them even more. The station was damaged but stable. Most of the students were safe in the emergency shelters. But there were 3 Vrecken raiders unconscious in various parts of the station. One had a shattered eye cluster. Another had fractured limbs. The third had chemical burns on its shell. And in a maintenance tunnel near the emergency shelter, they found Hyun Kim. He was unconscious, covered in cuts and bruises, but alive. The station's security cameras had recorded everything. The footage was immediately sent to the Council Fleet Commander, who watched it with growing confusion. Then the commander sent it to Counselor Thren. Then Thren sent it to the full council. Within 2 hours, every species in the Galactic Council had seen the video of what happened. They watched a young human student attack a Vrecken raider with a serving tray. They watched him lead the pirates away from other students. They watched him set traps in the maintenance corridors. They watched him use improvised weapons and environmental hazards to fight creatures twice his size and strength. Most shocking of all, they heard him laugh while doing it. The aliens didn't understand. The Council species had detailed profiles on thousands of intelligent species. They understood how different creatures behaved. They could predict responses to danger. But this human behavior made no sense at all. Prey species didn't attack predators. That was a universal rule. When faced with a stronger enemy, the logical response was to submit and wait for rescue. Fighting only made sense if you had a reasonable chance of winning. This human had no such chance, yet he fought anyway. Even more confusing was his strategy. He didn't fight to escape. He didn't fight to defend himself. He deliberately led the Vreckens away from the other students, putting himself in more danger to protect others. "This is unprecedented," one counselor said, watching the video for the 3rd time. The human didn't exhibit normal fear responses. Instead, he became aggressive. Dangerously aggressive. "Look at his physical changes," another counselor observed. His pupils dilated. His movements became faster and more precise. His face showed emotional intensity we've never seen before. "What happened to him?" "Predator mode," Counselor Thren said quietly. The human entered predator mode. The phrase spread through the council chamber. Predator mode, it sounded frightening and primitive. It sounded like something that shouldn't exist in civilized species. But what triggered it? Quillix demanded. "We need to understand this. If humans can spontaneously become violent, they might be dangerous. We need to know what causes this transformation." Jiwan stood in the council chamber, exhausted and emotionally drained. He had just received word that Hyun was alive and recovering. The relief had been overwhelming. But now he had to face questions he didn't know how to answer. "Ambassador Park," Thren said gently, "please help us understand. What causes humans to enter this predator mode? We need to know so we can prevent future incidents." Jiwan thought about how to explain. How could he make them understand something that was so basic to human nature? Hyun wasn't in immediate danger at the start, Jiwan said slowly. The Vreckens were securing hostages, not killing. Any human in that situation should have submitted and waited for rescue. That would have been the logical choice. Exactly, Quillix said. So why did he attack? What was the trigger? I believe, Jiwan said carefully, that Hyun acted to protect the other students. He saw the Vrecken reaching for his friend Kuvex, and he reacted. The council chamber fell silent. Then the questions began. But Kuvex is not his family member, one counselor said. There's no genetic reason to protect him. Perhaps it's territorial, another suggested. Humans protecting their claimed space. Or a dominance display, offered a third. Showing strength to establish hierarchy? Maybe it's related to mating, Quillix proposed. Some species become aggressive during breeding season. Jiwan listened to their theories with growing frustration. They were trying to fit human behavior into their own frameworks. They were looking for logical, biological reasons. But they were missing the point entirely. In the observer section, Ji-Woo Kim had been watching the entire discussion. She had spent years studying alien psychology. She understood how they thought, and she understood why they couldn't comprehend what her brother had done. She stood up and requested permission to speak. The council granted it, curious to hear from the human cultural expert. Honored counselors, Ji-Woo said, her voice clear and strong. You're asking the wrong question. Every alien in the chamber focused on her. You want to know what triggered predator mode. You're looking for a specific cause. A threat to self-preservation, a territorial violation, a biological imperative. But that's not how humans work. She activated her datapad and projected the security footage onto the main screen. Watch this moment carefully, she said. Right here. This is when Hyun acts. The Vrecken hasn't touched him. It hasn't threatened him. It's reaching for QVEX. And that's when my brother attacks. The aliens watched the footage again, focusing on the exact moment. Hyun wasn't defending himself, Jiwoo continued. He was defending his friend. A Pelion he had known for only 3 months. A being from another planet, with different biology, different culture, different everything. But Hyun considered QVEX a friend, and humans protect their friends. That makes no evolutionary sense, Thren said, though his voice was thoughtful rather than dismissive. Self-sacrifice for non-relatives? Risking death for beings outside your species? That's irrational. That's illogical. To you, yes, Jiwoo agreed. But humans evolved differently. We survived on Earth because we formed tight communities. We protected each other, even at personal cost. We developed emotions like empathy and loyalty. We created social bonds that were stronger than genetic ties. She paused, letting her words sink in. You call it predator mode, Jiwoo said, but we call it something else. We call it courage. We call it friendship. We call it love. The word love caused confusion throughout the chamber. Most council species had translation difficulties with that human concept. Their languages had words for genetic bonding, for pack hierarchy, for symbiotic partnerships. But love as humans understood it. That was alien to them. So you're saying, Quilek said slowly, that humans become dangerous when they care about someone?
Yes, Jiwoo replied simply. And this caring can extend to any being.
Even aliens? Yes. Quilek struggled for words. That's terrifying. Jiwoo smiled sadly. Maybe. But it's also why Hyun fought so hard. Not for himself. For his friends. Part 4. Recovery and Understanding. The medical facility on the Council defense ship was quiet and clean. Soft blue lights glowed from the ceiling, and the air smelled faintly of antiseptic. Hyun lay in a recovery bed, connected to various monitors that tracked his vital signs. The council doctors had been amazed by his healing speed. Humans recovered from injuries much faster than most council species. Within 3 days, Hyun's cuts had scabbed over. Within a week, his bruises were fading. The doctors said his cracked ribs would be healed in another 2 weeks. Your species has remarkable regenerative capabilities, one of the doctors told him. It was a floating jellyfish-like creature that communicated through color changes. On my world, such injuries would take months to heal. Hyun smiled weakly. Humans are pretty tough. We had to be, growing up on Earth. Visitors came regularly. QVEX visited every day, bringing news from the other students. Shissel came and told him stories about her gas-form homeworld. Crix visited and showed him patterns in her crystalline body that represented gratitude in Vex culture. But the conversation that Hyun remembered most clearly happened on the 5th day, when Ambassador Jiwon Park came to visit. Jiwon entered the room, looking tired. The past week had been difficult for him. The council was in chaos over the human predator mode incident. Every species had opinions. Every news outlet across the galaxy was discussing it. Humans had become the most talked about topic in council space. How are you feeling, Hyun? Jiwon asked, sitting in the chair next to the bed. Better every day, Hyun replied. The doctors say I can leave soon. That's good news. Jiwon paused, choosing his words carefully. Hyun, do you understand what's happening in the council? The debate about what you did? Hyun nodded slowly. Jiwoo told me. They're trying to figure out why I attacked the Reckons. They're calling it predator mode. Yes. And they're concerned. Some species think humans are dangerous now. They're worried about what might trigger this transformation. They want protocols and warnings and restrictions. Hyun felt a weight of guilt settle on his chest. I'm sorry, Ambassador. I didn't mean to cause problems for Earth's diplomatic relations. I couldn't let them take QVEX. Or any of my friends. Jiwon leaned forward, his expression serious but not angry. Hyun, I'm not here to criticize you. You saved lives. The station authorities confirmed that 17 students would have been taken hostage if you hadn't acted. You're a hero. I don't feel like a hero, Hyun said quietly. I feel like I messed everything up. You didn't, Ji-won assured him. But you did reveal something about humans that the council wasn't ready to understand. They've spent thousands of years believing that intelligence and civilization mean abandoning violence completely. They think aggression is primitive. They think fighting is wrong in all circumstances. But sometimes you have to fight, Hyun said. Not because you want to, but because someone needs protection. Exactly. And that's what they don't understand. They keep trying to find a logical trigger for your actions. They think you must have been defending territory or responding to a biological imperative or following some instinct for dominance. Hyun shook his head. It wasn't any of that. I just saw my friend in danger and reacted. I know. Your sister explained this to the council. She told them about human emotions like friendship and loyalty. She tried to explain love. Ji-won smiled slightly. That concept confused them greatly. Love shouldn't be confusing, Hyun said. It is when you've evolved past it. Most council species don't form emotional bonds like humans do. They have partnerships based on mutual benefit. They have family units based on genetic ties. But friendship, love that extends beyond blood relatives, that's alien to them. Hyun thought about this. He thought about Kuvex, who had spent hours explaining Pelian astronomy to him, even though Hyun barely understood half of it. He thought about Shissel, who had taught him songs from her culture. He thought about Crix, who had shown him how Vex crystalline biology worked by letting him examine her arm structure under a microscope. They're my friends, Hyun said simply. Species doesn't matter. They're good people, and they needed help. What else was I supposed to do? That's the part they can't comprehend, Ji-won replied. The willingness to sacrifice yourself for others, the automatic response to protect the weak. These are human traits that most species have evolved away from. There was a knock at the door. Kuvex entered, his 3 eye stalks bobbing nervously. I apologize for interrupting, Kuvex said in his whistling voice. But I needed to speak with Hyun. I have questions. Of course, Ji-won said, standing up. I should return to the council chambers anyway. Hyun, rest well. You'll be back on your feet soon. After Ji-won left, Kuvex sat in the chair, his forearms fidgeting with each other in a sign of nervousness. What's wrong? Hyun asked. I have been watching the security footage, Kuvex said quietly. Many times. Everyone in the galaxy has been watching it. And I have questions about what happened, about why you did what you did. Okay, Hyun said. Ask me anything. When the Recon reached for me, you attacked it. You could have run away. You could have hidden. You could have reached safety before the raiders even noticed you, but instead you fought them. Why? Hyun thought about how to explain. Because you're my friend, Kuvex. I couldn't just leave you. But you put yourself in danger. You were injured. You could have died. I am not your family. I am not even your species. There is no logical reason for you to risk your life for me. Logic isn't everything, Hyun said gently. Sometimes you do things because they feel right, even if they're not logical. Vex's eye stalk swirled in confusion. That makes no sense. Decisions should be based on rational analysis. Cost versus benefit. Risk versus reward. By those measures, your actions were completely irrational. Maybe, but I don't regret them. This is what I don't understand, Kuvex said, his voice rising with frustration. Pelians used to have emotional responses like humans. Millions of years ago, we would fight to protect our groups. But we evolved past that. We became civilized. We learned to think rationally instead of emotionally. The entire council has done this. It is considered progress. But at what cost? Hyun asked. You became safer, yes. But did you lose something important too? Kuvex was silent for a long moment. His body posture shifted, becoming more still. After the attack, Kuvex said slowly, when we were in the emergency shelter, the other students talked about what you did. The Pelians said you were foolish. The Harumi said you were unstable. The Vex said you were dangerous, but none of them said you were wrong. What do you think? Hyun asked. I think. Qvex's eye stalks turned different colors, showing deep emotion. I think you saved my life. And I think the word the Council is looking for is not predator mode. The word they are looking for is friendship. But they have forgotten what real friendship means. Hyun felt warmth spread through his chest. You understand? I am beginning to, Qvex replied. Humans have something we lost. Something we gave up when we became civilized. You still care enough about others to fight for them. You still form bonds strong enough to risk death for. That is not dangerous. That is beautiful. The Council doesn't see it that way. No, they don't. They are afraid. They see your capacity for violence and think only of the danger. They don't see the reason behind the violence. They don't understand that you only fight to protect, not to conquer. More visitors came over the following days. Shissel came and said that among the Harumi, there were ancient legends of beings called guardians who would defend others at any cost. She said humans reminded her of those legends. Crix came and explained that in Vex history, there had once been a warrior caste that protected the weak, but they had been phased out thousands of years ago when the Vex achieved perfect logic and reason. She said perhaps that had been a mistake. One by one, the young students who had been on the station began to understand what the older council members could not. They began to see humans not as dangerous predators, but as potential protectors. The debate in the council chambers continued for weeks. Some species called for restrictions on human travel. Others wanted psychological screening for all humans entering council space. A few suggested quarantining Earth entirely until humans could be properly civilized. But Ambassador Jiwon Park had a different idea, and with the support of Councillor Thren and a growing number of younger council members, he began to push for something unprecedented. If humans had the capacity for protective violence, if they would fight to defend others, if they retained this ancient instinct that the council species had lost, then perhaps that wasn't a weakness. Perhaps it was exactly what the galaxy needed. Part 5. The Guardian Initiative. 3 months after the incident, Hyun Kim was finally cleared to return to his studies. His injuries had healed completely, leaving only small scars on his hands. The doctor said he was in perfect health. But everything else had changed. The exchange station had been repaired and reinforced. New security measures had been installed. Most importantly, 2 human security officers now lived on the station permanently. Their job was not to control the students, but to protect them. When Hyun returned to the station, he received a hero's welcome. Students from dozens of species gathered in the main hall. They had made banners in various languages, all saying variations of "Thank you, Hyun," and "Welcome back." Guardian, Qvex was the first to greet him, all 4 arms extended in the Pelian gesture of deep respect. "It is good to have you back, my friend." "It's good to be back," Hyun said, genuinely smiling for the first time in months. But the real changes were happening far away, in the council chambers. Ambassador Jiwon Park stood at the central podium addressing the full Galactic Council. Next to him stood Lieutenant Minho Choi, who had been promoted to director of the new Guardian Initiative. "Honored councilors," Jiwon began, "we have spent 3 months debating what happened at the exchange station. We have analyzed human psychology. We have studied Earth's history. And now I believe we understand the truth about what you call predator mode." The chamber was silent. Every species waited to hear what the human would say. "Humans did not evolve to be conquerors," Jiwon continued. "We evolved to be survivors. Earth is a dangerous world. It has predators, diseases, natural disasters, and harsh climates. To survive, early humans had to work together. We had to form strong social bonds. We had to be willing to protect our communities, even at personal cost." He paused, letting his words sink in. When Hyun Kim saw his friend in danger, he didn't think about logic. He didn't calculate odds. He simply acted to protect someone he cared about. This is not a flaw in human psychology. This is our greatest strength. We care about others enough to fight for them. Councillor Thren leaned forward, his eye stalks focused intently on Jiwon. "Ambassador, we understand this now. But the question remains, what do we do with this information? How do we integrate a species capable of such violence into our peaceful society? I propose we don't try to civilize it out of us, G1 said firmly. Instead, I propose we use it. The Galactic Council has been peaceful for 10,000 years. You have built a society based on reason, logic, and diplomacy. This is admirable, but it has also made you vulnerable. Quillix hissed in his serpentine way. What do you mean, vulnerable? The Reckons, G1 said simply. They are not the only pirates in the galaxy. There are raiders, slavers, and hostile species beyond Council borders. Your defense fleets are designed for large-scale military conflicts, but they're slow to respond to small emergencies. Stations like the exchange station are left unprotected because you believe that diplomacy and ransom negotiations will keep them safe. This has worked for thousands of years, another counselor objected, has it? G1 challenged. Or have you simply accepted a certain level of casualties as inevitable? How many hostages have been taken over the centuries? How many ransoms have been paid? How many times have Council citizens been harmed while waiting for help to arrive? The Council was silent. They had never thought of it this way. Humans offer an alternative, G1 continued. We can be your guardians, not conquerors, not soldiers seeking glory, but protectors who will stand between danger and those who cannot defend themselves. Minho stepped forward. The Guardian Initiative proposes placing small teams of human security personnel on vulnerable Council stations and outposts. We will not interfere with local governance. We will not impose human culture. We will simply be there to respond quickly when threats arise. And you believe humans can do this without becoming the threat themselves? Quillix asked skeptically. Yes, Minho replied. Because unlike the raiders and pirates, we have something they don't. We have empathy. We have loyalty. We fight not for profit or power, but to protect others. That's the key difference. Jiwoo Kim stood up in the observer section. She had been asked to provide the psychological assessment of the Guardian Initiative. Counselors, she said, I have studied 50 human candidates for this program. All of them have military or emergency response experience. All of them have been psychologically screened. And every single one of them has the same motivation. They want to help. They want to protect. They want to make sure what happened to the exchange station students never happens again. She displayed profiles on the main screen. Men and women from various Earth nations and cultures, all different ages, backgrounds, and specialties, but all sharing the same core trait, the willingness to risk themselves for others. Humans call people like this heroes, Jiwoo explained. We celebrate this trait in our stories and history. We teach our children that protecting the weak is the highest form of courage. This is not aberrant human behavior. This is humanity at its best. The debate continued for hours. Some counselors were convinced immediately. Others remained skeptical. A few were openly hostile to the idea of armed humans throughout council space. But slowly, support grew. Younger council members, especially those who had friends among the exchange students, spoke in favor of the initiative. Species who had suffered recent pirate attacks saw the benefit of rapid response teams. Even some of the older, more traditional counselors began to acknowledge that the council's current security approach had significant gaps. Finally, Councillor Thren called for a vote. The Guardian Initiative, he said formally, proposes that humans be granted special status as protective service personnel within council space. They will be authorized to use force in defense of council citizens and property. They will operate under strict guidelines and oversight. All in favor? The voting took 10 minutes. Each species had to achieve internal consensus before casting their vote. The tension in the chamber was electric. When the results appeared on the main display, Jiwon felt his heart racing. The vote passed. Not unanimously, but with a clear majority. The Guardian Initiative was approved. Over the following months, the program began implementation. Minho personally selected and trained the first wave of human guardians. They were sent to vulnerable stations throughout council space, exchange stations, trade outposts, research facilities, anywhere that needed protection, but was too remote for fast military response. The Guardians didn't carry heavy weapons. They carried only defensive equipment and non-lethal tools. Their job was to protect and evacuate civilians, not to wage war. But every species in the council knew that if pushed, if people were in danger, these humans would fight. Hyun completed his studies at the exchange station with honors. He decided to stay in council space, taking a position as a xenobiology researcher. But he also volunteered as a trainer, teaching other humans about alien cultures and psychology. It's not enough to be willing to fight, Hyun told new Guardian recruits. You have to understand who you're protecting. You have to care about them as individuals, not just as mission objectives. That's what makes us different from the pirates and raiders. We fight for people, not against enemies. Qvex also stayed on the station, pursuing his dream of becoming a scientist.
He and Hyun remained close friends.
They often had dinner together, discussing their research and arguing about scientific theories. One evening, 6 months after the Guardian initiative launched, Qvex asked Hyun a question. Do you ever regret it? Attacking the Reckons? You were injured. You could have died. Your actions changed Earth's entire relationship with the Council. Do you ever wish you had just hidden and waited for rescue? Hyun thought about it seriously. He looked at his friend, at the Pelion who had become like a brother to him. He thought about all the students who had been saved that day. He thought about the humans now serving as guardians across the galaxy, protecting people they had never met. No, Hyun said simply, I don't regret it at all. News began filtering back to Earth about the Guardian Initiative's successes. Human teams had stopped 3 pirate raids before any hostages were taken. They had evacuated a research station during a reactor emergency. They had rescued miners trapped by a cave-in on a remote asteroid. In every case, the Guardians had risked themselves to protect others, and in every case they had proven that human predator mode wasn't about mindless violence. It was about protective courage. The Council species began to understand. Humans weren't dangerous because they could fight. Humans were valuable because they would fight for the right reasons. At the next Council assembly, Councillor Thren approached Ambassador Jiwan. I want to apologize, Ambassador Park, Thren said quietly. When I first saw the footage of young Hyun fighting the Reckons, I was frightened. I thought humans were unpredictable and dangerous. I was wrong. You were trying to protect the Council, Jiwan replied. I understand. No, you don't understand, Thren insisted. I have lived for 300 of your years. I have seen the Council grow and prosper, but I have also seen us become soft. We are so committed to peace that we have forgotten how to defend it. We rely on slow bureaucracy and diplomatic processes even when immediate action is needed.